You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And tonight we're talking all about AI in dentistry. So I really do encourage you to pay close attention, because this is certainly a piece of technology that can absolutely have a resounding impact on the success of your dental practice. To help me with this conversation, I've got the magnificent Joshua Blount from Pearl AI. Welcome, Josh.
Oh, thanks, Julie. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. You and I have been in communications for the past few months, but for people who don't know about you and Pearl AI, first of all, tell us a little bit about you.
All right, yeah, sure. I've been in dentistry for about 17 years. I worked in the U.S., obviously, for the large part of that, in practice consulting and growth management. So about 15 years in the Los Angeles area, spent a lot of my time working with small private practice all the way up to larger multi-office practices. And a large part of what I did was I would go into these practices and really work with them on just kind of finding out how they work from a kind of mathematical growth model. So really looking at, all right, well, if a practice wants to get to 4 offices or wants to grow by 100%, how exactly are they going to do that besides just marketing more and adding more staff? So we'd really break it down for them on really getting into how productive each dentist is, where there might be some missed opportunities, and how that came about to get me into Pearl. Was one of the things that was very difficult to change was if a practice had low producing associates or high attrition rates, what can we do? And the thing that initially caught my eye with Pearl was really doing a couple different things. One was it really allows for practices and doctors to be a lot more confident in their diagnosis. And that's what we saw a lot, especially with new grads coming in and being an associate. They were pretty low producing from a per exam level. So I would always want to look at how can we increase the production of associates without overwhelming the patient. It's a fine line, right? Because if you start over diagnosing, well, patients are going to leave. And if you start humming and hawing and have low diagnosis, patients will actually leave as well. And so Pearl is such a great product for that, because if you have an overproducing dentist, well, it's going to bring them a little bit lower into the middle. And if you have a low producing dentist, it'll bring them up. So the retention in patients will increase almost automatically. And that was the hardest thing in my years in dentistry, is seeing how much attrition there is in a practice and no one really knowing. If you ask a dentist, well, what do you think your attrition rate is? They're like, no, everyone stays. Everyone loves it here. We all know that's not it, right? If you look at the math, you can say, well, you've had one hygienist for 10 years and you're getting 30 new patients a month. You don't need to be a math major to understand that there's about 30 patients a month leaving from somewhere, right? So that's really what's made me pivot into really focusing on Pearl. I've been in Australia now for 3 years. I've been working with Pearl in a couple different facets for a couple years, but I've really gone full time into Pearl and really working on expanding the Australian market really over the last couple months. So it's been pretty exciting to see kind of what's coming down the pipeline.
That's fantastic. And John Schwartz, you've just joined us from Pearl AI as well, just with fabulous timing. So welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Pearl AI?
So Pearl AI is focused on reading digital x-rays using artificial intelligence. And This is an issue, as what Josh was talking about. This is an issue that um, is really sort of powerful because until now, really, it was just a dentist and their eyes looking at X-rays and being human. One of the problems that we have as dentists is that we're human, and the AI is not human. The AI actually doesn't get tired. It doesn't like have a big lunch and then sort of miss stuff, or doesn't have a fight with its partner, that sort of thing. So the way I like to think about it is the AI is this sort of help to the dentist that fills in some of the things that they might miss. But most importantly, where we see the biggest and kind of most profound change in practices is around educating patients and building trust. And Josh was talking before about attrition. And, I think about going to the dentist and sitting there and them showing me this kind of grayscale view of things. And honestly, it's like, okay, doc, sure, that I bet that's a cavity. Whatever you say, fine. Either way, though, whether I sort of believe him or I don't believe him, I walk out of there not understanding what he just showed me. Usually, he or she just showed me. And I think with Pearl, what we've been able to do is to bring that understanding to patients in a very intuitive way using technology that they have come to expect in their lives, meaning some type of AI, right? So when I give presentations a lot, I'll give an example from my Apple phone where AI is being used to sort of sort through the images on my phone, and I'll search for a dog, right? Um, and it will bring up all the dogs in my photos, but there'll also be like one of my son in there, like it's not totally perfect. So it's really funny, but like AI isn't perfect, but what we've found in our studies is that when you add Pearl's second opinion to the dentist, together they are far more accurate and consistent than the dentist on their own. So, one of the studies we did early days was looking at three dentists and the AI. And we said, okay, all of you, look at 4,000 images and come back to us and just show us where the caries are, right? Where are the cavities? And at the end of that exercise, there was 4% unanimity around the presence of caries in these
Is that
x-rays.
it? 4%?
4%. So So imagine you
Using
have an
AI.
office. Well, I mean, like this is the cool thing, right? You have an office and you have multiple dentists, like kind of Josh was talking about. You've got dentists who are sort of not, who are maybe not confident enough to say, "Hey, this is a caries" or whatever. Then you have others who are sort of looking for it, everywhere. And what the AI does is it creates some agreement and a certain level standard in the office when paired with humans. So it's not about AI versus humans. It's about AI and humans coming together to really, really be a lot more sort of consistent and educate patients in a really profound way. So anyway, that was like a long digression, but Pearl was really started to solve these issues. And our CEO had a very, very successful AI company before spinning Pearl out of it that focused on advertising and media. And he was one of the pioneers in bringing computer vision AI, which is really the AI that identifies objects in images or in video. He was one of the pioneers in bringing that to advertising and sports and all kinds of other cool stuff. So, but he reached a point where he was like, all right, I want to focus on healthcare. I want to help people's lives. And his dad was a dentist, so we started to look into dental x-rays, and that's sort of how the company was born. That was about 4 years ago, and now we have regulatory clearance in over 120 countries. We have, a very, very large presence in the United States, Europe, and in Australia. So we're really proud of what we've done, but we're also really excited to be out there kind of working with these patients and helping these patients understand what's going on, and also giving the dentists a lot more confidence in what they do.
And I think that's an important point to go down of who is Pearl AI, because it is a worldwide company. It's been around for a long, long time. So one of the things to be aware of, I had a dentist call me a few weeks ago and say, with this AI, and the way he was talking about it, he was coming from the perspective that if the AI says, this is what's going on in the patient's mouth, you must then just go down that path. And I said, no, 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 it's just further information for you. And as you were talking about it, it made me think, because AI is helping you see all the things. Just like dentists now, a lot of them wear loupes to magnify in order to see all the things, to see what was they were blind to before. And so to really recognize that this AI is not another practitioner sitting beside you, it is merely a tool for you to use. And one of the biggest things that Josh and I talk about on a regular basis is it really does assist in that patient seeing and knowing things in their mouth the way you do as a practitioner, because up until right now, they've just had to have trust that what you said goes. Because you're right, when you look at an x-ray and you've got a dentist telling you all about it, and me having years in dentistry as a dental assistant and receptionist, etc., I can say, yeah, I can see the cavities and things. However, my mum's in hospital at the moment. I've had ultrasound images put up in front of me and they say, see this? And I'm like, nah. Well, it's like a snowstorm for me.
Right.
So I just have to have faith in the fact that you know what you're talking about, you know what you're seeing, and so I trust you with that. And so AI can really play a big role from the patient's perspective of recognizing what needs to be done in their mouth.
Well, and that's so right. I mean, we've talked about it before, where the dentistry has changed so dramatically over the last 10, 15, 20 years, where it's so much more transient of the population coming into a normal dental office now versus, I go to this dentist because my parents and my family have gone to this dentist for 20 years. It's just not the case anymore. So where it used to have just a level of built-in trust because he's almost a family member, like your family doctor, now it's not. You go online, you see who's the closest dentist to me. I go in and hope he's good. Right? And you're just hoping what he's telling you is true, right? So, I mean, that's why it is so critically important. If you have this tool, it just adds that layer of trust. It's like, well, okay, this guy, I might not believe that I need a crown because nothing hurts, but the doctor's telling me and the AI is showing me, okay, most likely I do need this. I do need to get this taken care of. And even though work can be done in a practice, the amount of people that leave a practice after they get work done is such a higher figure than most practices think it is, because they don't write a note to you. One of the owners I used to work with would always say they don't write you a note on flowery stationery telling you why they leave the office. Right? They just leave.
Yeah.
Right? But so much of it is because they get something done, they think about it. Worst case scenarios, it didn't hurt before, they get a crown done, and then now there is sensitivity. Like, wait, I was fine before, I get work done, and now my tooth is sensitive, right? So it is so huge to be able to add that layer of trust in by doing nothing else besides having just that AI component.
That's right. And, when we've been a dentist for decades and decades, we've had a practice for a long period of time, we've been seeing these patients for years and years and years, we can say to that patient, you need 4 fillings, there are 4 cavities in place, and that patient will say, absolutely. You say it, I don't ever need to see the x-ray. Mm-hmm. You say it, I believe it. However, the dental industry is filled with more people than that. The dental industry is filled with new grads that have not yet learned the rapport building skills, communication skills, how to explain something to a patient where they can truly understand what's going on. It also has people who may not be naturally comfortable speaking with patients, and so they may have confidence problems, fear problems, challenges in terms of communication. We've got people who possibly are in the industry that have that kind of sense of arrogance about themselves, and just because I say it, you should believe me, but that trust hasn't been developed yet, and so they get frustrated with that space. And the AI takes the question mark away for the patient, and it fills in a bit of a communications rapport building gap as well for dental practitioners. And so, Josh, when you were speaking before about going into practices when you're a consultant and saying, the owner of the practice is bringing this much in per hour, the associate's bringing in about half that, when, we go down the pathway of trying to figure out what can we do about that, this AI can really help bridge that gap as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because a big issue that I saw, and I'm sure you see in practices, is normally what's the solution for an underperforming doctor in the office? Most practices will say, we need to give him more exams. We're going to get his production up by giving him more exams. And I'm saying that's the exact opposite thing to do, because his production per exam is the lowest in the office. So you're actually cutting into your profitability by putting more exams on a low producing associate. But that's usually what offices do. So, I always would go the other way of like, well, look, he needs to get himself balanced out before you just add more onto him. Where, you had AI in there, and that's going to be by far the quickest, easiest, quote unquote, fix. Even if you can get his production per exam up $100, $200 per exam by using AI, is, a huge boom to your bottom line and profit on once you start adding associates into the practice.
Mm. And I think, when you come at it from the patient perspective, putting it, if you can imagine having that consultation, it's a new patient that's come in, you have no idea what history they've had unless you've, completed a very intense questionnaire of them, but they may have been burnt in the past, or they may not have been burnt in the past by conflicting opinions from different dentists that they've gone and seen. But I can imagine one of the scenarios that would play out is that you go ahead and you do an initial consultation with a patient, and you have the AI involvement, and then when you put the AI up on the screen, you bring the patient around to sit with you so you can go through your findings. It shifts from, this is what I've seen that you need to get done in order to achieve optimal oral health. It shifts from that to, hey doc, what's this? Why is that circled? Why is that red?
Yeah, honestly, I look at this all from the patient's perspective, because I'm not a dentist. So I have kind of a natural bias towards the patient. But you're exactly right. We have a lot of clinicians who will take imagery and also scans, the whole thing, put everything up in front of the patient and just let the patient sit with it for a moment and let the patient point things out, like you said, and say, hey, wait a second, what's that whole magenta area on my tooth? Like, what's going on there, right? And then immediately you're in a dialogue with your patient. The patient's in a dialogue with you. They feel like their healthcare is in their hands a little bit more. They have a little bit more control over what's happening. And if that conversation, that dialogue goes well, then you're building trust. It's the same as if you're talking to somebody, in any environment, right? Little back and forth, good questions, you're starting to build trust. So now the patient is asking questions, dentist is answering authoritatively. Keep in mind, I don't think anybody really got into dentistry to read x-rays unless you're like a radiologist, right? I can't imagine coming into the office every day going this is the hill I'm going to die on and being right about this x-ray. Who, seriously, and maybe that's why everybody's so depressed. All right, you can edit that out. The ultimate thing here really is, let's give the dentist a chance to do what they got into dentistry for, which is to really help patients, is to really educate the patients, get them involved. And that's what not just our AI, but all kinds of AI and software out there does right now. There's so much great stuff out there. I think Josh and I have talked about this before, but I kind of got to a place in my career in dentistry where I was a little bit jaded and disillusioned, and I was like, is this all there is to it? And then when I discovered what's going on from kind of this new technology frontier, it really got me excited, because ultimately the patient's going to benefit from all this, and so is the dentist. The dentist is going to get to do the things that they really enjoy, and the dentists we've talked to that use Pearl, that use these types of softwares, are much happier, and they're really doing fun things, and they want to talk about it. But yeah, you're exactly right, Julie. It's getting that patient into their own treatment. And once they take ownership of that, it also makes case acceptance much easier. So with Pearl, we see about an increase of 34% in case acceptance among the dentists that use it, that use our sort of, our visualization tool. And that's really because now that the patient believes in it, they can say yes. They're like, yeah, of course, I trust you. I understand it. I'm going to do this. So it really impacts that side of the business as well. And I would say, like, most of the dentists I meet aren't into being salespeople, and they just want they're a little uncomfortable with that. I think a lot of people are, actually, salespeople are sort of a different breed, but I don't think a lot of people got into dentistry to try and hustle people on Invisalign or whatever whatever it is. They really got into it to help patients. So we just want to be a tool for that. We want to be in the middle of that. We want to help people do that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And when we're talking about the experience that some patients have had, as you mentioned before, only 4% of 700 dentists looking at the same range of imagery, radiographs, agree that these were the specific cavities that were at play there. So dentistry, as a medical profession, there is trust there, but there's also an element of mistrust there, of people that feel like they've gone around and got broad ranges of different costings at different places. And just in the Melbourne Herald Sun the other day, it had an article in it talking about a study that was done. I think the study was done in Sydney, actually, but that the same patients went to the same, they did a ring around to all of these practices, and they said for a standard checkup and clean, it ranged from $99 all the way up to $800. Now, as somebody in the dental industry, I'm like, well, that's crap. I don't think there's a practice out there charging $800 for a checkup and clean. However, the public believe this, and the public talk about this, and whether it's true or not, there is that element of distrust. If I had a practice and I adopted this Pearl AI into my practice, and we were we'd gone through the role plays and the integration, all the team were behind it, knew what it was all about and how we're using it, I would be promoting the hell out of it online and in my advertising and on my website, because you are saying, in essence, you can trust us because we're going to give you the proof, because seeing is believing.
Yeah. We have quite a bit of that, actually. I was surprised at first to see dentists who want to really become, really, really experts, but it really has benefited them, because you're right. Now their patients say, oh, okay, my dentist really has my best health. They're on the cutting edge, however they want to interpret that. Very, very, very few people will respond with, well, I don't know if I trust that technology. I think we've passed that phase in the curve, I think. And dentists have really, really embraced this. That use it. We actually have a whole entire area where we can get them logos and all kinds of artwork that they can use on their website, or videos in the front office. Things like that have been really, really effective. But yeah, it's becoming a big part of dentistry. And I think when I speak with people, I say, okay, let's say we're standing here 5 years from now in your office. Do you think AI isn't going to be playing a part in every piece of your workflow here? Like, can you imagine that it wouldn't be? And then when you step out of it, you go, oh, I guess not. Then it kind of makes more sense as to where we are in this moment. I don't think we even realize how fast we're moving right now. And there's just a lot going on. And if you look at Gen Z and all of the traits of this population that's going to the dentist, it's all changing very, very rapidly.
It is, and from my perspective of as a consultant, so this isn't speaking from experiences in a dental surgery situation, but from a consultant situation, I love ChatGPT. I call her Chatty Cathy because she's like a team member of mine who's very, very cute, and I love it all. And so now, I've got a video maker, in video AI that's helping me. I've got all of the AI social media tools that are going on. I've got this and that going on all the time. And right now, I feel like I'm just trying to check in with myself. I think I'm discovering a new AI tool that I can use effectively that will really reduce down my working time, increase my effectiveness with all my bits. I think I'm finding something new every 2 weeks. And it feels like you need to run to keep up with it. But don't resist that. Just love that, because everything is there for us to be more effective.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you said earlier. I think Josh alluded to this. It's a tool. It's if you take it off of sort of the pedestal of like fancy technology that you have to have a PhD to create, you know, think about it as a tool, an elegant tool that you can use. And also, you're not going to use it for everything, and that's okay. I was at a presentation in London the other night, and there was sort of like this rumbling about, well, you know, is AI going to? Somebody said, kind of in joking, is AI going to take our jobs? And I said, well, no, I mean, it's not going to take your jobs, but other dental professionals that use AI effectively will take your job. So it's just like what you were saying, Julie, like in your everyday, when you use it effectively, it's a force multiplier for the things that you need to do. And at the end of the day, why do we do that? Well, it's because we want to spend more time with our family, or we want to have a richer life, or we have other things that we want to do, right? It's not, you know, I mean, some people are geeky about it. I look at it as a tool, like anything that can get me to my family, spending more time, doing things I love, that's worth it for me. So it's almost like, let's bring it down to that level and think about what we really want to be doing with our lives and where this technology can take us in order to do that.
And I've got to say very quickly, Josh, I want to throw it to you, but if we are getting a 34% on average increase into our treatment plan conversion rate, and we're attracting it back into the industry, patients that have lost trust in us, it's creating more positions in every practice because they're going to have too much work than they can handle. Josh, what are you going to say?
Yeah, this is saying, piggybacking off of what John said, I mean, really, you also want to look at it as just a differentiator in your practice. Like if you have patients that have gone just from a normal practice and they come into your practice and you have this tool, like what are the odds that they're going to go back to a different practice, right? Like once you see the imaging and you kind of see the tooth parts and you see the AI as a patient and you're like, oh, wow, that's cool. And then you go to just a regular practice with a normal grayscale x-ray imaging, you're like, oh, this is all
archaic.
You have. Just a different, yeah, right. I mean, you know, so I mean, even the stuff that happens on the back end of referrals and retention and all that stuff, just because you now are differentiating yourself and have the latest tech, and you know that people respond to that now. So it's a big deal.
Well, and it's interesting, you know, that this retention word, it applies to staff as well. So when you think, I mean, one of the things that I learned when we came into the Australian market, I was talking to a leader of one of these DSOs, and he said, you know, we want to expose our teams to this because once they feel like they're working with something like AI, that's another skill set for them, right? That's professional development. That's like Josh said, it's like working on the cutting edge. And we see it as a way to retain and also attract talent. And I thought that was really profound. And we started to kind of surface that in other conversations we're having with our customers, and it really resonates. I mean, it's really something that people do believe in, bringing the best to their employees, really.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm often quoting Daniel Pink's book Drive that taps into our three main drivers as human beings: purpose, autonomy, and mastery. We want to continually get better at what we do. And this is one of those avenues to, you know, recruitment's tough in the dental industry and many industries at the moment. It may be a permanent toughness that we're living through. But doesn't it also, when we are looking at refilling our auxiliary recruitment market with fresh faces, because there's not enough dental ones left in there because a lot of them left during the COVID space. I think and here in Victoria, we lost 31% of auxiliary team members in this market. And that was from a TAFE dental assisting training organisation, that figure. So no wonder we're suffering, because I'm imagining that's the same Australia-wide and possibly in America and UK as well.
Sure.
But when we are looking at, well, we need to bring more fresh blood into this space. Like, this is exciting. This is AI stuff. This is data stuff. This is all. And I was speaking to Josh on a couple of occasions in the past just about how the sophistication of dental practice software systems now. Back when, I mean, I think it was called Dentrix, or it was very, very old. It was, you know, it was no mouse back
Probably
then.
was Dentrix, yeah.
and you know, you become very quick and good on the keyboard with it all, and you get pretty quick with it all. But the kind of data that you needed in terms of tracking key performance indicators, you couldn't track 50 of them because who can do that? They're all done manually. So you'd have maybe half a dozen that you track if you were really on top of KPIs. Now the systems are delivering enormous amounts and scope of data to you. And as Josh said, it's one thing to look at it. It's another thing to have that make change, positive change within your dental practice. So there is space there. In fact, there will end up being a need in our dental teams to open up positions for the traditional positions, receptionist, practice manager, maybe senior DA, but to have this other layer of intelligence and skill set on them, it all of a sudden is an exciting space to be if it wasn't exciting before.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not to butt in front of you on this one, John, but I mean, so much in dentistry and dental growth is used on kind of the subjective thoughts of the people in the practice of, hey, why aren't you growing by 20%? And they'll just use their own subjective, well, you know what, this happened and that happened. And there's like no objective data for what is actually happening in the practice, but it's buried in the software, right? It's there, but they're using subjectivity instead of objectivity. And I think that's a big thing that AI is going to do. And I'll let John speak to about, some other stuff that Pearl has up their sleeve, but it's going to be so huge to practices that really embrace the objective data that's available to them, and then being able to use that to actually push the practice forward. I mean, over the next year or two, using AI and some of the tools available is just going to be a game changer for these practices that really embrace it.
I mean, Josh, I love that you said it's buried in the computer because that's exactly where it is. And like when you think about the last 20 years of dentistry, what we call the digital dentistry era, right? We have done a really good job of creating millions and billions and trillions of bits of unstructured data that sit in servers that at one time served a very transactional purpose, right? I took the image, I showed my patient, we moved on, we did the treatment, right? But now, and you could say that about Invisalign scans or any of the stuff that we're creating, things in PMSs, all that. But now what we're able to do with AI is we're actually able to say like, okay, give us all of that data. Let's make sense of it for you. And like Josh is saying, like we're about to enter this kind of moment where so much of that data is going to start to become less transactional and more strategic for these offices. It's a change that's happening. We're starting to see it, and it's going to turn the average owner or dentist into somebody who really has like high-end business analytics for their business. I always joke, like, the funny thing about dental is you go to dental school and then you graduate and you're expected to run $1 million business. And think about that, right? Like, I can't imagine myself in my 20s trying to figure that out. And yet that's sort of the common way. I think AI is going to help that. It's going to make people more savvy, and it's going to be able to crunch a lot of that data. It'll be interesting to see where we end up with this, actually.
I agree. It's exciting stuff. I want to be at the head of it. I want to be the one bringing information to the people out there. Now,
you are. That's what we're doing. I love it.
That's right. We're living the dream, man. One of the things I will mention, just in case people haven't seen you at the local expos or called you and gotten more information, what oral conditions does Pearl AI diagnose or assist in diagnosing?
So when we pull up an image, we're able to detect caries, periapical radiolucencies, margin overhangs. We also measure bone length, so CEJ to the bone crest. We have that up there. We identify calculus as well. So those are sort of the main ones that we're looking at. And that's on your basic periapical or bite wing, and then with panos, we're able to identify caries and periapical radiolucencies. We also identify existing restorations and tooth parts. So, for instance, we can identify fillings, we can identify implants, and so forth. So you can turn those filters on and off in terms of what you're looking for. So those are the main things that Pearl's going to identify. And then you're also going to have a slider that takes you from sort of high sensitivity to lower sensitivity. And what's nice about that is, depending on the type of dentist you are and how you operate during the day, you might want a high sensitivity so that you see everything. You might get a few false positives in there, but you're not worried about that because you're really looking for that early incipient caries. Maybe you're going to treat it with something like curodont or what have you, but maybe that's your goal. Or you're sort of on the higher confidence area, less sensitive, and you just want something that's going to validate what you're seeing. Either way, we can kind of work with you in the structure. You can also edit pathologies. So if, let's see, there's a caries that the AI has identified that you don't quite agree with, you can go in and remove that from the image permanently, or you can even add different pathologies to it. So we want to make it really intuitive for the user, and I think in general it really is. It's very, very straightforward as a tool to use. And then, as we keep talking about patient education, and just to go a little deeper on that, when you first open the image in Pearl, you're going to see the pathologies on the grayscale. So we colorize those pathologies for you. Then when you click onto the tooth parts, what it does is it now colorizes all of the tooth parts. So the dentine, the enamel, and so forth are different colors. That's what enables the patient to understand what's happening. So you can go back with the patient and say, hey, look at this caries. It's like right near your root. Oh, I didn't know what a root, I didn't know that's where it was. I didn't know you couldn't see soft tissue on an x-ray, things like that. So this is really, really helpful for the patient. So those are the two modes you would view with second opinion.
Beautiful. And from a logistics perspective, so Josh, you were mentioning earlier before we started recording that you've got integration with Dental for Windows.
Yes.
And so what happens from the perspective of whether you have integration with the software or not, from the clinical perspective, do you have the AI image up in front of you and then you make those notations within the charting on your dental software?
So right now, what we're doing is you're viewing the annotations in our viewer in Pearl. Now, you might get to that viewer from Dental for Windows if you're using Dental for Windows. If you're using Sedexis for your imaging, you can get to that from Sedexis, and many others. So we try and cover any software that you're using for imaging specifically. We usually support. So that's kind of that. But the next phase in this is to say, okay, here's the data that we're detecting in the image. Let's intuitively get that into the PMS, into the charting and all that. That's what we're kind of working on right now with a number of different companies that we work with these integrations. So it's an exciting time. We have a really exciting what we call a native integration with Planmeca's Romexis, where when you pull up the image, just as you normally would in Romexis, all of the detections are right there for you. And they've added some really slick kind of views to that, actually, that we don't even have in our standalone. So it's an exciting time, and we just want to meet practitioners where they are. So it can be really simple, or it can be really fancy and complex. It's really up to them and how they want to use it.
Beautiful. And do you have like a print function that you can actually print these sort of images out to get delivered to patients later on? You can always screenshot and do it yourself manually, but is that also part of it?
Yeah. We have the ability to download a PDF and then print that out, and that's going to give you the basic detections in that X-ray. We keep it fairly simple. We have a version 2.0 coming out shortly that's going to have all of the tooth numbering, and at some point we're going to give the dentist the ability to go in and add free-form comments to these images, which will be really helpful in terms of, like you said, sending it home to the dentist, to the patient. I mean, a lot of this really comes down to establishing the trust with the patient while they're in the office. So when they do go home and they have what I call sort of that kitchen table conversation with their partner or their kids or whoever it is, right? They feel really empowered with what they're getting out of the system. And that might be a printout or an email that comes to them. I'll just say that there are a lot of really interesting technologies out there right now that are addressing that moment from the time the patient walks out of the office to when they accept treatment, and trying to really make that a lot faster through patient education and other things. So it's a really exciting space right now.
Wonderful. So from a compliance, TGA, regulations perspective, is there anything that dental practitioners out there that need to be aware of from that perspective?
No. So we have, yeah, we have full TGA. We have all of the, we're certified in all the ways you need to be certified. But yeah, there's nothing they need to be aware of or concerned about. We exceed the requirements actually of the Australian Data Privacy Act, and also we're fully in line with GDPR as well. Not that that's a big issue in Australia, but we do hold ourselves to a very, very high standard. All the data that goes back and forth to the cloud is encrypted both ways. So we really spend a lot of time and money making sure that that data is locked down. With Dental for Windows, for instance, with our integration there, we transact the data in patient ID rather than name. So then that's even another layer of privacy. But we're very, very focused on that. And also we have like the regulatory approval.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And, Josh, you'll appreciate this. When you get a consultant to come out every month to your practice to help you improve, and all the things to improve my turnover, improve my new patient numbers, improve my patient retention, improve my patient treatment plan conversion, improve all the things, that can run into thousands of dollars every single month. This one tool can have an enormous impact within the practice, and it's really like it's a no-brainer from the cost perspective.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think, we've talked about this before, and you've asked, why have I pivoted really 100% into Pearl, and it's because for the price, it's $450 a month. For that price of what it actually adds to the practice is kind of ridiculous compared to anything else that you would pay for to have a fraction of the effect that this would have. And I think that's the one thing that you and I have talked about before is, as consultants going into the practice, like what are the things that we would like to have to make our jobs easier, right? And Pearl is one of those tools that when you bring into the practice and say, okay, what sort of return are you going to get on this type of investment? I mean, $450 is going to be impossible not to find one or two, cavities in a month to make up for that, right? But what's really interesting that I've had in the past, and I'm sure you've seen, is the amount of money that practices spend on things that actually have no effect on the bottom line of the practice is pretty amazing. And I'm talking about thousands of dollars, not hundreds of dollars. And this is one of the things that fixes a variable that in 15 years I could never figure out how to fix. How do you get retention increased and doctors to produce at a consistent level, right? I mean, I'm not a dentist, so I could never really go into a dentist and watch them perform. The only thing I could really help on is, hey, you know what? Your verbiage you might want to tweak a little bit. There's too few of ums and ahs, and when you said, a lot of if you bring it back and you say, for it's how critically important it is for the confidence to be there when you're delivering that diagnosis to a patient of saying, hey John, you need to really get this crown done. Do me a favor, until you get this fixed, don't chew on this side of the mouth because we don't want it to progress or worsen. He's like, all right, we'll get you scheduled up. I want to see you next week. We'll get Judy to schedule up front, but I want to see you within a week. It's critically important we get this taken care of. And another doctor says, hey John, I think you might have a crown on this side. Could be a filling. I'm not too sure. We might want to get that taken care of. Why don't we try to get something scheduled? And, it would be good if you got in here sooner rather than later. Those are two very, very different ways of saying the same thing. But the second person thinks they're saying what the first person is saying, right? It's not the same. And having that tool in there to say, okay, John, the AI says that you need to get this taken care of, and yeah, I agree, let's get this scheduled. It just allows that confidence to kind of shine through a lot more for those dentists that just don't have that natural ability to be so confident in their delivery.
Yeah, that's it. And I remember I was watching a demonstration of a dental AI ages and ages ago, and the dental AI came up with, a certain series of conditions, and there was a dentist in the little group that were kind of all physically watching what was going on, and the dentist said, "Oh yeah, but you wouldn't say all that to the patient because it would freak them out." You're like, what? That's like, I'm not going to tell, I'm a cardiac surgeon, I'm not going to tell the patient how bad they are. That will just freak them out. But in the past, they would have experienced the freak out. But now the patient's actually seeing it. They're the ones saying, wow, look at all those things. Sorry, I interrupted you then, John.
No, I mean, you're exactly right. And one of the things I say to people, and this goes back to my previous startup that Josh and I worked on a little bit, like, nobody ever just sort of pushes off or skips an appointment with their cardiologist. But honestly, I might push my dental appointment 6 or 7 times before I actually go in, right? and this is the challenge that dental professionals have, is that they're not seen. The mouth isn't seen as connected to the body. I mean, we all talk about the oral systemic, issue, and I think it's becoming more prevalent these days. But generally, it's not as important. And part of it gets back to exactly what Josh said. It's how it is presented to the patient, and whether the patient trusts the dentist. When the dentist says, yes, you need to be here in a week, don't chew on it, whatever it happens to be. That's the trust. That's where the trust comes in and makes the dentist a real healthcare provider and part of that person's overall health, rather than sort of this person that I have to see once in a while and it's painful and all that stuff. So anyway, that's kind of how I see it. It's really, and like Josh was saying, retention is so important. So that's how it all comes together.
For sure. And it's all about the meaning that we attach to these sort of things. I remember back, from the decades that I've been assisting and at reception and things, there's been, Diagnodent, which was a little cavity testing tool, and there's, caries detector, and all the different things. And if you attach the meaning to Pearl AI of, this is replacing me, or this is questioning my diagnosis, or this is highlighting things to me potentially that I don't see myself, of course it's going to be a threatening thing to incorporate into your practice, but that's not what it is. As we mentioned before, it's a tool. Just like any other tool that you have purchased in your practice to assist you in the diagnosis process, such as loops as well, that's all it is. And the minute you put that meaning on it, all of a sudden, you can use it the way it's been intended to use and benefit from the benefits it's promising.
Well, even the name, the name is second opinion, right? And I think that's so huge because it basically eliminates the need for a patient to go get a second opinion. It's like, okay, well, the doctor says it, the AI says it, am I really going to go now get a second opinion at a different office? And I think that's what happens so often in practice, is that, you diagnose, like you said, all of these things, and the patient's like, geez, do I really need that? What's the first thing they do is go get a second opinion. And so it is such a great way to look at it. Like you said, it's not meant to replace someone. It's not meant to question a dentist's ability to be able to diagnose or not. It's really meant to allow the patient to have that trust in the practice. It's all about increasing trust. I mean, trust is the number one reason why patients, or the number one thing patients are looking for in a practice. That's been in multiple surveys of what's most important to you in your dental practice. It's trust. So if you're able to get a tool into the practice for a minimal cost to increase the trust in that practice, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Absolutely. So for $450 a month, you'd be crazy per practice, not per practitioner, per practice. You'd be crazy not to look into this. If there are people out there that are intrigued about the benefits of Pearl AI, what's their next best step?
Yeah, I really recommend going to our website, hellopearl.com. There you're going to find numerous videos, some really interesting videos on patient experience, actual patient experiences, and also the ways in which dentists are using this in their practices, some great testimonials, that kind of stuff. we also have sort of an ROI analysis and so forth. But also, the most important thing to do would be to just click on the button to get a demo, and somebody in Australia will call you up and set that demo, and or probably just happen automatically, and get the demo. Spend some time with the product, see it, ask questions, go into it, with a skeptical mind, all those good things. But we're here to help, and just drop by the website. You can also email either of us. You can email me at john@hellopearl.com, and Josh, what's your email again?
It's Josh Blount Joshua Blount at hellopearl.com.
Beautiful. And all those links and email addresses will be in the show notes as well. Anything else we should speak about before we close off this interview?
No, I got to say, Julie, thank you for having us, and I think this is a great topic in the consultant world as well. Like Josh was saying, how do we start to use technology in this way? I think it's an interesting conversation, and I'm here for it. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you both enormously. Yeah, I've enjoyed it so much. It's such an exciting space. It is a space where usually new technology in a dental practice is not just tens of thousands of dollars, but hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring it in. But this is, it's $450 a month. It can really transform things for your team, for your patients, for your practice as a whole. And at the very least, start looking into it more and see what it could mean for your practice. So thank you both enormously. I found it wildly interesting.
All right. Thanks, you, Julie.
Thanks, Julie. Good seeing you.
See you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, then I encourage you to head over to Amina and my website, dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. You will find all the information that you need if you would like to gain our assistance in helping you and your team achieve great success. We've got online courses, consulting programs, the club membership. We also have a whole bunch of tools and resources that are available for free that will help you achieve your practice goals. If you would like to find out more, you can also email us directly at info@dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. Thanks so much for listening.